Azeem Azhar started Exponential View in 2015, a decade of writing about AI, starting before it was cool. And Azeem, you were actually early and right about everything. And I saw you speak in London around that time as well, 10 years ago, and became a reader around the same time. So this is a conversation I've been wanting to have for a while now. And we're sitting here at Vilnius AI Summit. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
I've been building in AI ecosystem for around 10 years myself. And for most of that time, conversations that we were having sounded like science fiction to everyone else. Since starting a couple of years back, it seems like businesses started to catch up, and now more or less everyone is getting on the same page. But the productivity gains that we were expecting are not yet always visible in the bottom line, in the P&Ls of the businesses. Azeem, where do you think that leak is? Why we're not seeing it in the results everywhere already?
10 years is a long time. So thank you for reading Exponential View for that long. It's funny, if we go back to the technologies before ChatGPT or the large language models that underpin them, it's amazing to think that we believed there could be an enormous amount of productivity enhancement because we've really forgotten about them in some way, right? They've become very, very normalized. What happened with ChatGPT was that we could talk to our computers, they could talk back, they could start to handle a very, very wide range of tasks. And that is a real milestone, it's a completely different paradigm. Because it's a different paradigm, the ability for companies to really adapt to it and to make sense of it is actually just going to be a little bit harder, because it's not like it's a hammer or a forklift truck or a laser printer. It's all of those things, but it's also none of those things. And so I think a really good analogy is how long it took electricity to make a difference at the turn of the 20th century. For the earliest companies, it took about 10 years, maybe 5 years. For the economy as a whole, it took about 40 years. And the reason is you have to change so much about your business to go from steam power to electricity. And that analogy, I think, is reasonably accurate for AI. I think one of the harder questions is which companies will actually be able to do that. Because if we think about electricity in, say, the car industry, the car companies that were not built around electricity at the beginning, most of them didn't succeed and weren't meaningful in scale. It was really Ford and the American companies that came after electricity that had these big factories that did very well. I think a really open question for AI will be, number one, when will incumbent existing companies start to benefit from it? And it's hard to get right. And number two, will the real gains actually emerge in a class of new companies that are built with AI at its core? And in short, that means the answer to your question, Domas, is we're just a bit early to measure economy-wide effects of AI. And what we should be looking at is those earliest customers and whether the early adopters are starting to see results.
So timeline-wise, do we then compare that we're in a phase where we're layering copilots and automation on legacy processes?
Yeah.
We're asking for tools instead of full redesign to becoming AI native. Is that the point in the timeline from your perspective?
Well, I think companies are giving people copilots. Do copilots get you to a full AI company? Do ladders get you to the moon? I don't think that for most companies, giving people copilots will have a drastic improvement. It may improve productivity in some way. Let me explain why that's a problem. What a copilot does is it helps you execute tasks more quickly. But task execution in a large company is only a part of the job. The big delay is in the coordination layer. It's in saying, I've done the research, now let me find the marketing, production, supply chain, finance. Let's gather them together to discuss the research, They will then go off and do their own questioning, and then we'll gather again to make that decision. Now, that coordination layer might be 90% of the delay. And you may get benefits because you increase task execution, you get higher quality at lower cost. So there's some of your ROI. But the real ROI is going to be when you change that coordination layer. And the question is, are you even going to ask the right questions in your organization if people think using AI is using a copilot that is constrained by the vendor offering it and is constrained by the rules the finance department and the IT department have set around that copilot? So my sense will be that lots of companies will use copilots. In some places, there will be sectors of a company which breaks through and starts to think about what this really means. But ultimately, the vast part of the value will emerge in addressing the coordination layer, which I don't think giving individuals copilots does. What's the best way then to measure progress until we get there? So between 0 and 1, if we say that that 1 is AI native, the right. Orchestration layer fully resolved, how do we measure progress towards that? Some might argue that it's the token count that the company is burning through on a monthly basis. Would that be the right North Star? If you have to measure one thing, measure token usage, and specifically measure token usage per person per month. The reason that works is that it's very difficult to use lots of tokens without having results to show at the end of it. And so once people are good at using AI, they will start to demand more tokens, use more tokens, and they will start to become difficult in the team and in the company more widely. What do I mean by difficult? I mean, the group committee will come up with some decision that needs to be taken. They'll think it needs to come back in 2 weeks. And by that afternoon, an exceptional piece of work would have been done on that decision, and it will be pushed to the committee members to deal with. And they'll be under pressure to deal with it quickly. And the person who's being productive in this way will be more and more demanding of the people around them. And so one thing to measure then is token usage. The second thing to measure is where are there people who are getting stuck because the organization can't accommodate their output. Now, when you hire somebody in a company, you hire them to be productive. You hire them to do their job well. You hire them to get through a to-do list. If your company gets into a stage where you, Domas, are so AI native, you get through your year's to-do list on Tuesday at a much higher quality, the problem is not with you. The fix is not with you. The fix is with the company around you. And then you can observe that and you can start to think, how do we make use of this? How do we adjust that? The tension is, of course, if you're that good, you might start to say, well, why do I need all these people around me if I'm just waiting for permission? So this is a difficult thing for companies to navigate. And does that lead nearly every business that's operating in a digital manner, not in a physical world? Maybe even we'll get there as well, but for the beginning, in the digital world, does that make every company a tech company? And is being AI native the only path to remain relevant and competitive? Your competitiveness is going to depend on what other people in your sector are doing, right? Who else is competing for that share of wallet? But I think in a much, much wider range of companies than we expect, you can go AI native. I mean, think about something like, say, fashion retail. So you have physical products, it's kind of complicated because you have the sizes as well and a big range that you sell to people. Well, where does AI help? First and foremost, it will help in understanding what customers want. Then it will help in ensuring they can find what they need. Then it will help in deciding what the buying cycle should look like and what products you should take. It will help you in automatically segmenting and discriminating on price. So you can turn a company like that into an AI native company by essentially saying, where are there decisions which individuals take that we're taking slowly, we're not taking so many of, because that individual can only work so fast, and we can increase that by a factor of 100 by giving that person the AI tools. And what happens when we run not one A/B test on the checkout funnel a day, but hundreds? And what happens when we are able to interpret external signals on media at higher accuracy more rapidly to help us inform what will be the bestseller the next week? I mean, these are questions that apply to really any type of company. They don't have to be in the software domain.
When it comes to also being an AI native, that's on the company level, but also on a personal level. And you have opened Vilnius AI Summit today with a personal example of yours. We can probably even call it an executive twin, right? And
right.
I guess most of the founders or founders and builders are now often choosing delegating to an AI agent rather than to a graduate. I'm a bit worried where that leads us when it comes to, let's call that a career ladder, when that gap is becoming difficult to fill, when it's difficult to start as a junior, and how we are promoting later on into senior roles in 2030 in those AI native companies. How would you think we have to redesign and rethink careers as well?
Well, jobs always change, and they change more rapidly than people expect. We know that most of the jobs that people do in richer countries today didn't exist 30 or 40 years ago. I was the first webmaster in the first 2 full-time jobs I had that those companies had ever had. And it didn't exist as a job. And so you will always see changes within the job market. Now, I think that there is going to be a distinction between companies who understand this and therefore treat their junior talent well, and companies that don't understand this and keep their junior talent developing the wrong types of things. And I can think back to the early days of the internet, so 1995 to say 2002. I remember meeting software developers, junior ones, as late as 1997, who had been working for 2 years, who had never developed a website.
Oh, wow. Because
they were working in a large system integrator, they worked in C++, I don't think even C# was around at the time. They worked on big RDBMS, we used to call it, and they had never built a website. And the question is, why, in the 3 years since it was apparent that the web was going to be the dominant architecture, had those employers chosen to not skill up their people? That is not a function of the technology, the speed of the technology. That's not a function of the startups building the technology. That is fundamentally the function of the leadership of those companies determining what their discount rate was going to be when it came to investing in their people. If you work at a company like mine, I will be on your case about how much AI you're using. Yeah. Right? It costs me money every time you use 10 million tokens. But if you don't use those 10 million tokens, it means you don't know how to use those 10 million tokens, which means you're not achieving your potential in this world. So I think this question really comes back down to individual leaders. And if you are a graduate, you can get a job at Exponential View. You just have to be highly motivated. You have to have really good personal values. You've got to be a nice person. You've got to be able to learn quickly, and you have to demonstrate that curiosity. You just have to meet our normal set of hiring standards. And there are jobs, and we have doubled in size in 4 months.
Here in Vilnius AI Summit, we have a room full of leaders, founders, CEOs, managers of companies, organizations who want to apply this in real economy and apply this now. I think even for us in the industry, at least for me, I have FOMO for, a couple of years now because of the pace, how fast everything is moving and how quickly we get new models introduced and new capabilities. I find it quite difficult sometimes to keep up with the pace. I'm sure for others is way more complicated. If we took a standard few hundred person non-tech company, currently being a non-tech company, and their non-tech CEO gets to choose one or two things to do over the next 90 days to catch up with where everything is going, what would you suggest them to focus on?
Well, first of all, they will have to acknowledge that we all go through that period of feeling completely overwhelmed by the speed with which the new capabilities are being released and the new things that technology can do. The first thing you need to do is you have to allow people to experiment. And in a way, as the CTO, your job is to give up the controls on the technology that you have previously maintained, the budgeting and the other systems. You have to get things running, but the budgets need to live with the lines of business, because this is not a technology function like a laser printer or a database record you're maintaining. This is the intelligence that every line of business needs to do their business work. So that's the first thing you have to do. Companies need to have a competency ladder. We have 4 layers of competence. It's not 0 to 1, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And you have to identify where people are and how they will move through that layer of competence. Level 2, just to help understand, is someone who's using Claude Cowork or Claude Code and is running higher level tools like this to actually get finished pieces of work done. Somebody who knows how to write, engineer prompts and context and adapt them, someone who knows how to use these skills. At level 3, you're at somebody who is has an agent, knows how to use agents in more than just the coding domain, and can demonstrably run multiple agents across different tasks regularly. And at level 4, you get people who are able to ultimately guide large numbers of agents and sub-agents to achieve quite long-range business objectives. Now, even within my company, no one is at level 4 yet, right? So I'm at level 3. I'm trying to get to level 4. I've got some occasional demonstrations, but not reliably. And when you think about the company setup, you just need a number of level 2s, and maybe you've got 1 or 2 level 3s, but it's important, I believe, that they're not in one department. Because if they are all sitting in the finance department or the marketing department, they'll end up looking like a group of freaks from the future. And they will be rejected by the organization, or they will reject the organization. You actually want to foster it so that they are horizontal across the company. And the reason is that means that the bottlenecks are being created horizontally in the company or opened horizontally. And it will create a better spread of the capability. And then you need to move those level 1s very rapidly up to level 2 once you get that going. The level 2s will naturally move to level 3, but getting the level 1s up is really, really important. So that would be the process. I don't think it's 90 days, by the way. I think you can get some results in 90 days, but it will be honestly a longer process than that.
I believe you sit in a lot of private conversations.
Yeah.
And disruption leaders describe what they're up to and what they're anticipating in closed rooms quite often differently than when they're on stage. Without naming any names or quoting directly, what do you think is that gap that we're yet to witness and start talking out loud about?
The people who are really, really deep in this are essentially saying the things that you will largely hear publicly, which is demand is off the charts for AI, that they are constrained by the access to GPUs and to electricity and to transformers and to memory in order to serve customers, that the models are going to continue to improve more and more, that the arrival of these agent frameworks like Claude Code and OpenClaw are going to really help the diffusion of the technology within companies, and that large companies are struggling not because the technology isn't powerful, but because it is so powerful, it's quite hard to know what to do. I mean, that is the general consistent refrain that emerges in all the conversations that I have. Now, of course, that doesn't mean the companies are perfect. That doesn't mean there aren't leadership and people and political challenges. That doesn't mean there are hard decisions that they sometimes get wrong. But the overarching narrative that you get is one of a sustained customer boom that is not perfectly met by the market, that meeting that is hard, so sometimes mistakes are made. I think the place where the public narrative is completely at odds with the data that we see and the questions that people ask is when people are talking about the flatlining of capability, when people are talking about the over-investment or this notion that there's a bubble. I think the fact that we're already seeing increase and continued increased spend by customers who are not forced by anyone to spend money on this is demonstration that they see a path to value. The fact that it's taking a bit longer, or it's taking 3 or 4 years to see this show up in every GDP statistic, is not evidence that the technology isn't powerful and isn't turning the corner. It's in some sense supportive of the idea that it is powerful and it's quite difficult to use. This is an unknown road, Domas, that we're walking down. So many things can go wrong, but at the moment, I think this is a story of a boom.
Azeem, thank you so much for coming over. Everyone interested, I encourage you to subscribe to Exponential View and come over to next AI summits across whole Europe. See you.
Thank you.